the staff. Let's think of the staff in mathematical terms, because it's going to lay out everything from pitch to duration and rhythm. So imagine that the up and down, the y-axis, think of that as pitch, and think of your horizontal plane, your x-axis, as your duration, or how long a note will be. Clef. We're going to work with a bunch of different types of clefs. Let's start with the ones that you are already familiar with. The first clef we're going to talk about is our treble clef. The treble clef is also called the G clef. Now, there's a couple reasons why that's called the G clef. Number one, it looks kind of like a G. The other reason, and the more useful reason for the reason it's called the G clef, because if you look at the sign, it crosses the G line, which is this line right here. It's going to cross it once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times, telling you that this note right here is a G. And then you can use your basic knowledge of up and down through the musical alphabet. Going up, we're going forward in the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, and so on. Going down, we're going down the music alphabet. F, E, D, and then we get into our ledger lines, C, and so on, down the staff. For bass clef, we can also call that an F clef. The reason it's an F clef is because F lies on the line in between the two dots. Using the same idea, going up the staff, forward in the music alphabet, G, A, B, and so on, and going down, E, D, C, B, A, G, going down and down and down. Now, one thing that I want to point out, you guys have probably worked with Every Good Boy Does Fine. To remember the lines and maybe face to remember the spaces, that works. Sometimes I like to think every gross boy does fart. That's a good way to think about it. And then down here, good boys do fine always. And then we have it's good. I'm not really sure how we can put this into an acronym of some kind, but the basic idea that I want you to find is that anything in the treble clef, if this is a G, notice where the G is down here. Now that's just an easy way to remember how to get from treble clef to bass clef. You just move it all down one line. Now I'm not saying that these two notes are exactly the same. I'm just saying that that's a G, and if you need to find a G down below, this is actually 2 octaves below that the treble clef G, but it's a good way to be able to easily and quickly find out what that note is. The last clef we're going to talk about is our C clef. Okay? Our C clef. Now this has many names. It could be called tenor clef, it could be called alto clef, it could be called baritone clef, and the reason it's called different clefs is it doesn't only have to be on this middle line. It can the clef can also lie on this line, and the clef can also lie on this line. All you need to remember is that the line that intersects is where middle C is. That right there is middle C. this right here would be middle C. Wherever that little backwards 3 comes in is where middle C is. I'm definitely no expert in reading the C clef, but at least I always use the idea that that is middle C, and then I can work my way up D, E, F, G, A, B, and work my way down C, B, A, so on and so forth. The grand staff. Now the grand staff is a combination of our G clef and our F clef. This is normally used in piano music, which we're going to be focusing on in this course. And the reason the grand staff is very useful is because there's a very easy flipping point between the F clef and the G clef. Now remember, F was here and G was here. As we work our way towards the middle of the board here, this is where we're looking for that flip here. Here's our F, so this is G, F, we're coming down to E, D, and then we're going to extend one ledger line down to C. Now we can go more and more ledger lines in the treble staff, but C is actually going to be our flipping point. Check this out. Here's F, here's G, going up to A, going up to B, and then our next note is C. Notice how one ledger line below the treble staff is C, and one ledger line above the treble staff is C, or above the bass staff is C. This right here, these C's, are the same note. That right there is middle C. That's where the two clefs flip on each other on the keyboard. And it's middle C. It's right in the middle of the two staffs. It's right in the middle of the keyboard. I wonder why that is. Accidentals. Now, accidentals you'll usually find to the left of a note. When you're trying to read music, it's a little bit easier to know if you're going to alter the highness or lowness of a pitch if you can see the accidental coming. That's why they try to put it to the left of the note rather than to the right. Now when we say things like, for instance, if we were in the G clef, this would be G sharp. We call it G sharp because it is a G and it is sharp. Now we can call it sharp G if you'd like to use it that way. Either way works, but whenever you put it on the staff, usually the accidental comes before the note. Now there are 5 different accidentals that we need to get accustomed to. Okay, the first one is the sharp. That raises a pitch a half step. The next is a flat. That lowers a pitch a half step. The next is a natural. A natural will cancel all flats and sharps. So in a measure, if you have a couple G sharps, maybe the composer, or if you're the composer, wants to get rid of that sharp, you would put a natural. Because if we're in the same measure, accidentals carry through the entire measure. The last two is our double flat. Okay, so that one's going to be 2 half steps down or a whole step down. And our last one is a double sharp. Now notice how the double flat is actually 2 flat signs, but the double sharp, to make it a little bit easier rather than trying to mash in 2 sharp signs, all right, they use an X. instead of a double sharp, two actual sharp signs. So that one you're actually going to go up whole step. Enharmonic equivalents. The book definition, and it's a very good definition, is tones that have the same pitch but different letter names. Example of that, I'm going to keep working in a very similar or a very easy clef, G clef. Okay, an example of that would be F sharp and G flat. Now I'm going to draw a quick picture of our keyboard here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 notes there. Let's say that there's a black note here, black note here. Okay, black note here, black note here, here. Okay, and so on. Here's our C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now let's take a quick look here. If we look here, here's our F, there's F sharp on the black note. Notice here's our G, we come down a half step, there's our G flat on the black note. Notice how it's the same exact note. If we want to go a step further with this, let's think about F double sharp, which is equivalent to a G. Here's our F, double sharp up 2 half steps, here, here, there's our G. Okay, you can do this with any note. Now the funny notes that you're going to have are going to be E and F and B and C. Why? It's because those notes, E and F and B and C, are already half steps. So enharmonic equivalents, if you have an F flat, that is the same note as E. If you have a B sharp, that is the same note as a C. The opposite works as well. An E sharp is the same thing as an F, and a C flat is the same thing as a B. So enharmonic equivalents, same pitch, different letter names. Now the reason this happens is depending on what key you're in. Now we're going to get into keys into chapter 2, but we need to know this concept because we're going to see it now and again, and you need to be very comfortable with it. And it helps you kind of look at the half steps as well, and we're going to get into half steps next here. The last concept we're going to talk about is half steps. Now with half steps, I'm going to use the piano keyboard here to help us understand half steps. Let's start with our basic note here. Let's start with C, and we'll call this one middle C right here. It's kind of towards the bottom of the keyboard, but middle C is a great place to start. Okay, so a half step, the basic idea of a half step is any note that's next to one of another on the keyboard. So let's take a look. If we're starting at middle C, the next note on the keyboard is not this note here. It is not going to be that note. It's going to be the black note above it. The next note after that, next half step, would be here, D. Now remember our enharmonic equivalents, this note would be C sharp or D flat. Half step down for D flat, half step up for C sharp. Okay? Our next half step would be D sharp or E flat. We then have our our E, then our F, then F sharp, G flat, G, G sharp, A flat, next half step A sharp, B flat, next half step B, and then our next half step C, and then we just keep going. Half step, half step, half step, half step, so on and so forth up the entire piano keyboard here. Now with our double sharps and double flaps, we go up 2 half steps. 2 half steps equals a whole step. Now what that could mean here is white note to white note, white note to white note, white note to white note, or black note to black note, black note to black note. The only time that's going to be incorrect is from E, because that has to go over a white note then up a black note, or from F down over a white note up a black note. Same thing in between B and C. So we have to watch out for our E's and F's and our B's and C's. B is going to go over here and then up here, so our whole step would actually be from B to C sharp, and then our C has to go over to B and down to B flat for our whole step.